Welcome in, everybody, to a little bit of a Tuesday, or what is it? Saturday. We do the Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday night shows. We are live here on a Saturday afternoon. I mean, what else can you say other than college football always delivering? If you're watching on Twitter, come over to the YouTube channel, the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. But we are live. This is crazy as Kentucky takes down Ole Miss in Oxford. Just an absolute stunner. 20-17 is the final score. And just a couple weeks after your boy went after Mark Stoops, I got to own it. I got to take the L. I give this guy so much credit because what a game, what a finish. We had to do some quick live reaction. So everybody come on in. Appreciate everybody's support. We are live on the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. By the way, Mark, who runs our Torres on UK account, will do a spaces after I am done here. But this is just a thriller. Kentucky 20, Ole Miss 17. Let's go ahead and dive into what was one of the craziest finishes that we can ever remember. Listen, it's what we say about college football all the time, right? Is the idea that every single Saturday you come in, you think you know what's going to happen. You think you know what the results are going to be. Ole Miss, a 17.5-point favorite in this game, and they fall at home. Terms of the game, listen, let's jump right in. By the way, I have no notes here, so this is going to be a total off-the-cuff reaction. But listen, the story of the game is my man, big, you know what, Mark Stoops. If you got kids in the room, if you got kids in the car, cover their ears because we got to call it as it is. Big balls, Mark Stoops. That's what we're calling him from now on, okay? So this was the guy. As we know, 2 weeks ago, he had the opportunity, whatever it was, his own 48. I can't remember all the details now, but he decides to punt the football at home against Georgia. A lot of people, including me, absolutely crushed and criticized this guy, okay? And I thought it was justifiable at the time. But let's also call a spade because what was it? 3:51 left in this game. 4th and 7 at their own 20. Mark Stoops puts the ball in Brock Vandegrift's hand. He throws a deep pass to Berrien Brown. It is obviously a 63-yard completion. It is, by the way, if my math is correct, the longest play of the season for the University of Kentucky. And what else is there for me to say? Listen, I was critical. I got to own it. Mark Stoops. And by the way, I'll say this. I thought the right move was actually to punt the ball. Like I said, about 3:57 left. Your defense had been stopping them all game, but he decides to go for it, gets the first down, gets the go-ahead touchdown, and ultimately gets the win. From the Ole Miss perspective, we'll talk about that in a minute, but I want to spend another minute or so on Mark Stoops and this Kentucky team and this incredible game, because what stood out to me about this game was for a guy that, again, that I criticized. Listen, I got to take the L. Because this was a guy that I was criticizing, a couple weeks ago. I actually thought the game plan was perfect. And, by the way, hate to brag, but my official best bet on this game was the under 52.5 because I really thought that they were going to be able to do a better job of controlling the lines of scrimmage against Ole Miss. I didn't think that, though. I can't take credit for what we saw on Saturday. But what we saw, I thought, was honestly a pretty perfect game plan for that Ole Miss team, okay? Ole Miss comes down. They drive the length of the field. They score a touchdown on the first play, the first series of the game. And from that point forward, Mark Stoops and Kentucky largely controlled the game and largely controlled the line of scrimmage. I thought the first half was perfectly executed, okay? I thought it was a situation where a couple things. One, I know there was some criticism as the game went on. I actually loved the alternating quarterbacks. Gavin Wimsatt, obviously a dual threat guy. You get him a couple touches early, and I thought Ole Miss was on their toes the entire game. Beyond just the play calling, obviously controlling the line of scrimmage. And then from there, we got to talk about the fact that the University of Kentucky, that defense just got after people. Okay. I'm looking to see if we have any final stats on the defense. We do not. But one thing I'll say about Lane Kiffin, first of all, I think Lane Kiffin maybe should have spent a little less time talking about Hugh Freeze and Auburn all week and focused on his own team. But one thing I will say, when Lane Kiffin spoke throughout the week, I will give him credit. He gushed about this Kentucky defense. We talked about it on Friday's show. He said size, physicality, toughness. Walker, he referenced several times. And so I thought from the beginning, the game plan was awesome. The game plan was what you would want from a Kentucky fan. You take the lead into halftime, but I will also call a spade a spade. I thought the momentum shifted in the middle of the third quarter towards Ole Miss, but every time Kentucky needed a play, right up until that big fourth down, they were able to get it. Obviously, the fourth down, I don't even know if I referenced that Ole Miss missed a field goal at the end of regulation, which would have forced overtime. But listen, it was one of those games where I thought Kentucky had Ole Miss on their heels all game. It was because of that defense. It was because of the physicality. And it was because of the fact, two things. I thought it was a very well put together game plan, very well put together strategy by Mark Stoops, the OC, to keep that Ole Miss team off the field, and then thought that there was absolute dominance on the front end for Kentucky in the front end of that defense. Listen, we do have some final stats on offense. Let's take a look really quick. Ole Miss finishes with 353 yards. That's a little deceptive because they got a lot of it on that final, really two big Jackson Dart plays, right? That big throw, which set up, I believe it was the 3 points or 7 points or whatever it was late in the third quarter. And then that big fourth down conversion late in the game. But the defense was awesome. I got to give credit to Kentucky. And listen, a couple days after I crushed Mark Stoops, he had the day of his time. What was the stat? It was, well, Kentucky fans, correct me if I'm wrong here, and I'm having trouble keeping up with all the comments in the comment section, but I'm pretty sure the stat was 1-34 in your last 35 games against top 10 opponents. You get the victory. It's on Mark Stoops. I would add this too. I really think going forward, a couple things. First of all, defense, just elite, right? Not just today. And that was one of the reasons I thought Kentucky could keep it close is, listen, I am a guy that picked Bama to beat Georgia, part of it because Georgia struggled with that Kentucky front. But what I also said was that, listen, you look at this Kentucky defense. I think there was a misconception, not with Kentucky fans, but nationally, that the defense didn't do its part against South Carolina. They held South Carolina to 252 yards total offense, and the offense just, we know what happened in South Carolina game, okay? So the defense has been great all year, and I think what I learned today, the passing game, when you give Brock Vandagriff time, the passing game can make plays, is capable of making plays, and it just goes back to simple recruiting, right? Brock Vandagriff was one of the most coveted players in the portal this offseason. Now, there's a couple times he held onto the ball too long, but finished with 243 yards passing in this game. And then Barry and Brown, and of course, Dane Key just came up big play after big play after big play after big play. So credit where it's due for Kentucky. By the way, you talk about a well-timed win for Mark Stoops. You get to how about this? 3-2. You now go into your bye, but this is the interesting part. You now have this is kind of the soft spot of the schedule for Kentucky. You obviously had Georgia, Ole Miss early. You have Texas late, Tennessee kind of late, early November. But the next 3 games for Kentucky, Vanderbilt at home, at Florida, a program that you've dominated. Listen, if Billy Napier loses next week to UCF, I'm not even positive he's the coach for that game. And then Auburn at home. So obviously Auburn's playing later today. We'll see if there's improvement. But you're 3-2 now. We thought after that South Carolina game, there might not be more than 2 or 3 wins left on the schedule. All of a sudden, boom, you could be very easily 6-2 going into that game in November against Tennessee. So credit to Mark Stoops, finds a way to win. Listen, really quickly, by the way, I'll get to some of your questions. Would be remiss if I didn't talk about Ole Miss because, listen, this is the gift and the curse of the 12-team playoff era. In the micro and the macro, there's 2 different conversations. The micro is, it really doesn't mean all that much if you are an Ole Miss fan. It sucks You lost the game, but this is a 12-team playoff era. You know, a year ago, you came in with these expectations. You would have sat there and thought the season is basically over. Well, now, guess what? You got a couple big games. I think why this is such a crushing loss for Ole Miss, you don't have back-to-back road games in the next 2 weeks before you get a bye, okay? You have at South Carolina. Well, we saw South Carolina dominate along the front seven. So if South Carolina can do what they did to Kentucky and to LSU, I'm sorry, but that South Carolina team can do the exact same thing to you in terms of next week. By the way, then you go to LSU. LSU hasn't been good, but LSU gets a bye next week. Going into that game, you do not have a bye. And so it is a crushing loss for Ole Miss. The playoff dreams aren't dead, but I mean, you start talking about, listen, this 12-team playoff era, manageable schedule, but as we always say at college football, if you're not playing up to your ability, the losses find you. The good news is for Ole Miss, I think on the one hand, you could sit there and say, well, the only game that we don't feel great about is Georgia. But I think the counter to that is the exact opposite, is you lose to Kentucky. Now, all of a sudden, you got to play at LSU. You haven't won at LSU since 2008. I remember finding that stat in the preseason. You got to play at LSU. LSU is going to be coming off a bye. You got to play at Arkansas. Sounds like, oh, that's no problem, right? Arkansas, by the way, we're recording during the Arkansas game. It looks as though they are up 7-0 on Texas A&M early. But from the Arkansas game, you know, you look at that. Lane Kiffin is 0-2 in Fayetteville. So you don't want to get too high. You don't want to get too low. You don't want to get too worried. But Ole Miss struggles. They don't get the win. Tell you what, I do want to get to just a few questions. Then I am going to turn it over to Mark, who runs our Torres on UK account. He will do a spaces after this game as well. Want to get to a few questions. Obviously, first of all, I would say, listen, we're going to prioritize, if there's any, really, frankly, let's just be honest. If there's a super chat, we'll get to those first. And then, of course, we'll get to some of those questions as well. Let's get to it. Hold on one sec. Sorry, give me a second. Let's get into it. Hold on. I got to get to some of your questions. I want to get to some of your questions here in just one moment. Let's get to some of those questions here in just one moment. Apologize for this. Down arrow. Okay, let's go ahead and get to some of those questions, and then I will let Kentucky fans get back to a busy day of football. What a fun game that was. Let's see here. There's still some negativity. First of all, Opal says defense still wins championships. I agree 100% on that. From the Kentucky perspective, I think this is a good one from Scott. Save the season for UK. There's nothing else to say. Save the season. But here's the crazy part, is that as we have another lighting issue in this stupid studio, here's the thing for Kentucky. You have now won that game, but here is the crazy part. You win that game, and all of a sudden you sit there and you look at the schedule. Vandy at home, at Florida, Auburn at home, the next 3 games. You win those 3, you're 6-2. You're probably, frankly, ranked in the top 25. So credit to Kentucky. It was a season, I don't want to say season-saving win, but man, oh man, what a great game that was. Let's get to some of these questions. We were due after Georgia a few weeks ago. Listen, I don't disagree. I think Mark Stoops should have gone for it against Georgia. But listen, I didn't think he should have gone for it today, and he did. So I got to take the L on this one. Mark Stoops, I've been critical. What a game. Credit to him. Let's see. Nicholas Harden, who I don't think is a UK fan. I just watched it. UK is the real deal. It's a good game when Bama plays them. Does Bama play Kentucky? Am I missing something here? I was not aware that Bama was on the schedule. I'm not being sarcastic here. Let's see here. Bama does not play Kentucky as best I can tell, unless I'm missing something, but that's okay. It's all good. Let's get to a couple more. I thought for sure Kentucky was going to blow it. I'll be honest, I did too, Benjamin. Thought for sure Kentucky was going to blow it. Credit to them for getting the victory. Unbelievable game. This is a big key. This is a big takeaway. Alton says, so the Kentucky defense isn't a fluke after all. Listen, it isn't. Now, I'll say this. Don't know how it makes me feel about the Georgia game, because I did pick Georgia to, of course, lose to Alabama. And part of it was Georgia couldn't do anything against this Kentucky defense. think the reality is this Kentucky defense just might be that freaking good. So incredible win. Let's get to a couple more of your comments here before we get out of here. I'm going to turn it over to our Torres on UK account. He is going to have more. By the way, should mention as always that we are, of course, we are brought to you by Collie Puffs. Collie Puffs is our new advertiser. We appreciate Collie Puffs. We love working with Collie Puffs. And here's the bottom line. You've been on the couch basically all day long. You're going to be on the couch watching games the rest of the day. Here is what you need to know. You're thinking, I want a snack, but I need to eat something healthy because I got to go into work Monday and I can't be a total slob after watching 48 hours straight of football. That's where Collie Puffs comes in. Delicious snack, but also healthy snack, okay? Family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, who owns it, is a big-time football fan, and he basically came to the conclusion, what can I make that is healthy but delicious, that I can like, that my kids can like? And that is where Collie Puffs comes in. Okay, by the way, I got a box of them. I should go get some right now. But I'll tell you this, Collie Puffs, great family-owned company. Joey is the best. Baked, not fried, healthy ingredients. They taste phenomenal. We got the box yesterday. I ripped through almost a full bag of them, and they're very affordable. So go to colliepuffs.com, colliepuffs.com. You can also order them on Amazon as well. colliepuffs.com. Appreciate your support. By the way, should mention really quick, if you are not following our Torres on UK account, make sure to follow Torres on UK. We got those Hope and Pope t-shirts. Basketball season is coming quickly. Tell you what, we'll get to a couple more, then I will get out of here. Let's see here. Let's get to a couple of your questions and your comments. Unbelievable game. Jake says, BBN stand up. BBN stand up is darn right. Tennessee and Kentucky, Tennessee and Texas are still left on the schedule. Listen, I get it. I'm not saying you're 3-2 right now. I'm not saying you're going 10-2, but all of a sudden it was looking like 2-10 a few weeks ago. Now all of a sudden you're 3-2, and you have the chance, obviously, to just to really have some success here as the season goes on. Again, you're hitting a soft spot of the schedule. You go into a bye. You get Vandy at Florida, a team you dominated, and Auburn at home. All right, I'll tell you what. I think that's it for this. First of all, please make sure that you are subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. Appreciate everybody joining us. Appreciate everybody's support. Make sure you're subscribed. Put on the notifications. We're talking college football, college hoops all season long. Appreciate your support. I'm going to sign off. We are going to do a Spaces on the Torres on UK Twitter account. Mark, who does an excellent job running it, is going to be in charge. Enjoy it. I'll see everybody Sunday.